have Alliance War number 4. I'm still on path 2. I'm going to start by taking this Spider-Man stealth suit. They are running Flow this war instead of Stubborn, which is kind of weird. But I am going to jump in here with Nick Fury. You can Quake this fight, but I'm more comfortable just jumping with Nick Fury. I brought him in case we need someone who has like a can't be stunned, because the opposing alliance does have a MCOC on that like stun reflection node. So I'm just going to go in with Nick Fury. It's not a crazy fight. I'm not too concerned. I don't have any points in deep wounds. I'm still running suicides. It's not like a absolutely great moment for me, but that's okay. I'm going to throw this L1 just so I don't have to worry too much about too much of a Fury gain on Stealth Suit. Otherwise, I'm going to go for a really greedy medium heavy there. I thought I had enough time, but he does special one intercept me, unfortunately. But that's okay. I'm not too concerned about my health pool here. I do still have my life metal decoy, and I don't really need Nick Fury for like a lot of fights. So other than that, it's pretty just a simple fight. You know, at one point I do have to kind of bring myself to a concern about the quantity of Furies he's gaining, but as long as I have LMD or my Awakened ability active, I'm not concerned. I'll end it with a special 2 here, and pretty good. I wouldn't say it's like the best placement of a defender there, but it's a good diversity pick. If I had tripped up a lot, it could have been, you know, problematic for me, but really not that big of a deal. Here I'm going to go up against Medusa. I normally have Quake in my 3rd slot. I meant to Quake this fight, and I just, like, I don't know, robotically ended up bringing in magic, which really sucked. I, like, realized it as the fight was starting, and it was just too late for me to back off. So here I got a heavy counter in there. I'm trying to make it so she doesn't gain too many Furies because of that like whole auto block mechanic, and I'm backing off. I'm opting to just wait out the Furies for the most part. I know you can single strike Medusa, but once those Furies drop off, I'm able to throw a sweet special 2 because of Mystic Dispersion. I run a lot of Mystic Dispersion. That's gonna let me cycle into multiple special 2s, and that ends the fight super quick. So I just felt like that was a really safe way to play it. Just wait and time out the Furies instead. Don't get auto blocked and parried. Next up is this Killmonger. I checked the champions my like other alliance mates brought on this path, and they didn't have like great Killmonger options either. I decided I do have my LMD on Nick, and I only potentially need him for MCOC, so if I end up having to take that MCOC mini, then I'll just turn Attrition Masteries off, and I'll go in with Unstunnable Nick. So I decided to jump in with my Nick Fury. It's going to be kind of a rough fight just because there's a lot of power gain when you have the bleeds active, but it's still, you know, relatively okay with Nick. Damage output is okay. Killmonger specials aren't hard to dodge. The bleed damage is still good. It's not like he's shrugging it off or anything, and I don't have to worry too much about reverberation damage just because I'm going to be constantly baiting specials, etc. The only thing is, very quickly, in my attempt to get a deep bleed on him, I dropped both my heavies, and I just got super unlucky with the timing, because I don't have any points in deep wounds, unfortunately, is the mastery. So at this point, I don't really want to be taking blocked hits. He's already got 7 Furies. I really screwed up. I threw a special 1 just to, like, kind of help a little bit, but at this point, I need to play, like, really defensive, and time it out. So drop my 3 hits. The ideal situation is to push him to a special 2 as often as possible, so I don't like potentially get clipped by a level 1 or an L1. And I'm going to drop my special 2 here for some extra damage as well. As long as my LMD isn't used up, I'm not too concerned about recoil damage, etc. So here it's just a matter of slowing out, and it's a long fight. If you don't kill off the LMD, Killmonger is kind of tanky. Nick Fury's damage like is really minimal at that point. Here I thought I had pushed him to an L2. I dashed in and I triggered the Unstoppable, which is unfortunate because it does also trigger my LMD, but I'm going to go straight into a special 2 once I've done that, and it ends the fight. And you can just see an insane difference in damage. I was actually kind of trying to preserve the LMD there because in an ideal situation I would have been able to use him against MCOC without having to change up my masteries, but because I made that mistake, I just ended the fight. The damage with Nick is a lot higher once you have that active Fury. Just not what I wanted as far as like resource consumption, etc. So if I do end up having to take that MCOC down the line, I would definitely have to change my masteries. Wouldn't have the benefit of the drop off. Next up is this thing. There are some fun and fancy nodes here, but we're just going to skip through it for the most part because, well, not skip through it, but we'll play it at 2 times speed because this is really just a Quake and Shake fight. Nothing crazy here. I think I end up getting hit, but yeah, that's your standard Quake and Shake. There's some frustrating nodes here, I think, if you're not quaking it, so it's a pretty good placement for thing. But as long as the opposing alliance has someone who can quake it, it's a super easy takedown. I did end up getting clipped, so I did end up taking some damage. That was less than ideal, but overall, a fairly clean fight. We'll move on to the second path of my second section, and the first fight is Quake. I'm going to opt to, of course, quake it. So again, I'll do this one at 1.5, just to kind of go through. Nothing crazy. I'm going to take a pretty good amount of damage to my masteries, but the nodes are non-consequential as long as you don't end up hitting her. She has a fairly low health pool. This definitely feels like a diversity placement, because even on the nodes, like Quake isn't super difficult here. I do go for a super aggressive full combo there at the end, just to make it a faster fight, because she has a low enough health pool that it doesn't matter. And then finally, we also have a Mr. Sinister. Now, for Mr. Sinister, sorry, these Quake fights I really like to play at faster speeds just because it's a lot of the same. So I apologize if you're like, hey, I didn't like that. You could probably slow it down on your end and, you know, it'll balance out to an extent. But this Mr. Sinister, I'm going to Quake. It is a Rage Mr. Sinister. I had a pretty good amount of health, and I'm fairly confident in my ability to Quake and Shake Mr. Sinister. So I didn't feel the need to heal up or anything. Cruised through this fight fairly well. The only thing I don't like about this is, like, I feel like Rage does make it so I get a bit less damage off, but maybe I'm just wrong, and I'm getting the same amount of damage. Just feels much slower to me. And it's a long fight with Quake, so I think I need to get through 10 rotations, but otherwise it's a really easy fight. If I had like an ideal situation, maybe I'd bring Warlock or something. It's just a faster fight, not necessarily any easier or harder, but just the fast or the increased speed of it definitely feels a lot better. I think Doom handles this fight decently well, as well, with like the nullification and the power control, as long as you don't end up taking like an L1 to the face after you've dropped the Incinerates. But Quake is a pretty good option as long as you're consistent and confident in your ability to Quake these longer fights. Now, after this is a Nick Fury, and I really wasn't sure. I took some time to like evaluate where my alliance was, whether or not I needed to take the Nick. But I do end up deciding to take this Nick Fury down based on what my alliance team brought, everybody's health pools and stuff. I figured it would probably be better if I knocked him out, just put us in a slightly better position. If I can get the one shot, which I'm pretty confident I can with Quake, especially with the 5-minute timer, that I think that's better. But I'm only at 10,000 health, minus the like 10% health that I'm going to lose from my masteries. I decide to pop 2 more potions. This is going to give me 20% more health, give or take, which will essentially let me take the back half of a combo from Nick plus my masteries. And it's a longer fight, so I am fully expecting I'll trip up at least once or twice. That's my concern. So I'm going to slow this down because I do end up messing up. And we'll see whether or not those potions ended up being useful. So it's about 20% of my health is the potions. So when I mess up, if I go below 20%, then that means that was a clutch heal. And if I'm still above 20%, that means I totally wasted those potions. Confidence and safety net, you know, gone. But otherwise, Nick Fury's a pretty easy Quake, right? Like, you Quake him for the initial part, then once he triggers LMD, he goes unstunnable. So the biggest difference is that you just, you know, don't get this long period of stun. It's a lot slower, but he degens all the way down to 30%. It happens super quick, so there's nothing crazy there. As long as you don't hit him a whole bunch of times, he doesn't gain the tactical charges. When he doesn't gain the tactical charges, he doesn't have that anti-evade, so it's a pretty easy Quake fight as well. I think my biggest issue previously was, like, Nick does have a lot of health, and it is a longer fight, so like a 3-minute timer, you ran the risk of timing out. With a 5-minute timer, there is no concern. I do end up taking the combo to the face around here, I'm like double evading and I trip up here. He throws a heavy, so I take 2 heavy hits, and that plus the bleed you're gonna see is gonna drop me about 20%, a little lower actually, as the bleeds get me. So those 2 potions actually proved to be clutch. Like if I hadn't dropped specifically 2 level 3s, that's good, and that worked out really, really well in my favor. And that's just kind of like something when you're playing Quake, you want to be really conscientious of. Of course, the safest option is to heal up all the way, pop boosts and stuff. But when you get a sense for Quake, you'll get an idea of how many hits you can take based on how much health you have. It's a really, really good way to be conservative. So I got away with like literally the bare minimum heal, and that's ideal. Obviously, it would be better if I just didn't get hit, but that was a super random heavy, and I was not ready to dex it. Pretty good war. We did end up winning this war, so that's really, really nice. Super, super close, but it was really nice to win. But as always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.